Now, when we speak of entrepreneurship in the press, we're often speaking about individuals. We're speaking about Bill Gates or Steve Jobs, or these famous individuals who control emerging enterprises. I'm not speaking of entrepreneurship in the way of an individual. I'm speaking about it in the way of a process. Next, please. That process is a process that seeks to create value from a perception. That perception is the opportunity. But the value is not created by the individual, but by a team of people who take on the responsibility to put the technology to work and to recruit and put the money to work to create the value. And the mechanism for this is an entrepreneurial enterprise. Next slide, please. So how does this process of entrepreneurship work? Next, please. It doesn't work alone. It works on a platform. That platform is an entrepreneurial ecosystem. The ecosystem starts with knowledge. That knowledge oftentimes comes from our best universities, like yours. I'm very impressed by the universities you have here. I've had locations in the last few days, and your universities are certainly world-class. Those universities create knowledge, and they create great students. Students are different than knowledge. The students are people who can put the knowledge to work. When they do that, they're functioning as entrepreneurs. Then they have the motivation to seek the financial resources. In my community, that by and large comes from venture capitalists. Those are people who are incentivized and paid to create financial returns to their investments. It's quite different than seeking financial support from the government. But our entrepreneurs also seek financial support from the government. But usually government will not fund an enterprise for the long haul, with a big win. Government is usually very effective at providing small sums. Another secret ingredient in allowing these new ventures to succeed is the role of major corporations. Major corporations are often the factor that determines whether a successful small venture can become a large one. Because major corporations control access to customers. They control their own technology innovations. They are great conduits for emerging companies to access these larger markets. So this process is an interactive process between the individuals, the teams, the investors, and major corporations. And it's driven by an allocation of capital. In my context, that allocation of capital, the largest, as was said by our prior speaker, comes from private sources, not public sources. And those private sources are investing for the long term, usually thinking in 10-year cycles, hoping to exit through a stock offering to the public market or the acquisition through a public company, a large public company. This process needs expertise. Next, please. That expertise comes from management that is at a professional level. These are people who come into it. You could back up. These are people that come into an enterprise with the purpose of playing a specific role. They're professional managers. This is a rare thing that people entering small companies with the expectation that they're only going to contribute for 3 to 4 years and then move to the next section. Also professional. We have a colleague on our panel from Ernst & Young. This is a firm that knows how to work with young and emerging companies. It takes a special approach. So this whole ecosystem creates a cluster of innovation. Now these clusters cannot succeed in an isolated way. So for Tomsk as a goal, or Siberia as a goal, it's not enough to have a goal for regional economic development. The only way to do so in a pace that will benefit us and our children is to access the global markets and to become a node or a component of value, contributing with other clusters of innovation. Like you heard about Boston, Silicon Valley, we could be talking about Tel Aviv, we could be talking about Hyderabad. But these are the nodes of rapid acceleration. You need to be part of the network of clusters of innovation. Next, please. So these connections, and this slide has many names for these connections, and I won't go into it now in detail. But I studied the nature of these connections, and they range from casual relationships that we will build here today, getting awareness of each other and having exchanges of information, through to enduring relationships where people form the linkages between geographically separated clusters of innovation. So this is all driven, again, by people. People are the engine for change. Next, please. So a popular way of thinking about this process is the triple helix. We have looked at the role of government, the role of industry, and university in an interactive way to create an entrepreneurial ecosystem. I encourage us to continue to think about this process of the triple helix and how it can apply here in Tomsk. Next, please. So, as a final comment, this entrepreneurial ecosystem, again, is driven by people utilizing technology, emerging out of universities, and ultimately capital coming from private sources. I just want to emphasize the importance of stimulating a capital market driven from private sources versus government. Government has a very important role to play in creating the infrastructure and providing funding to support universities and knowledge seekers. This is the job of government. The job of funding individual business ventures is the role of private enterprise, but its incentives are not social, but business. And this makes sure resources are put to work to pursue those opportunities that have the largest potential. Next, please. So finally, this innovation of ecosystem, this engine of change, the cluster of innovation, I think is the goal of each of us in regional economic development. The importance to do it in the context of global leadership. I thank you for welcoming me here today. It's my pleasure to have this exchange by you. Thank you very much.
Коллеги, я хотел задать уточняющий вопрос. Ваши последние треугольники,
создание инновационных базовых данных одного региона просто не
не было правильности.
глупость.
В вашей первой схеме было слово value, да, ценность. И это в известной степени отражает саксонский взгляд на вещи. Не знаю, взаимно, но безусловно эффективно. Я думаю, что вопрос, который возникает у очень многих в российской аудитории, касается следующего. Не случайно Юрий в своем выступлении Сергей говорили о социальной привлекательности инноваций. И в частности о том, что инновации решали социальные вопросы, связанные с общественным иллюстрацией, с общественным здравоохранением и так далее. Как ваша схема позволяет запускать подобного рода социальные инновационные проекты без участия государства? Ну, кто-либо государства здесь в нашей жизни.
Sure, excellent question. Thank you for asking. Government has an essential, necessary role, and that role is the foundation of creating the gardens that entrepreneurs and business people plant the seeds in. So the garden, when I plant a garden, the first work is the harvest. When I come out in the spring, I don't know what it's like for you, but the weeds are a mess. The soil is very hard and compacted. universities in it. So this is the role of government. The role of government, is, in my view, is to be very concerned about the social outcomes. So, and then to enable those social outcomes, I suggest we need infrastructure, roads, telecommunications, capabilities. We need universities with knowledge and research, and this is the government role. And we need the rule of law. We need the respect for intellectual property. We need the respect for private property. We need transparency, and we need to do everything we can to control corruption. Because incentives for behavior should not be political once the seeds are planted. Once the seeds are planted, the incentives to be effective, to yield benefits to society, have to be aligned with the business being successful. Successful businesses create secondary social benefits. They create jobs, the products create value. They create a society that's optimistic and looks to the future. They create a political system where people are willing to share and participate because they have faith in the future and faith that their contribution will enable an opportunity for their children. So the role of government is huge and necessary, but it needs to have a gentle hand, a light touch when it comes to the individual decisions around which investments should be made, discreetly around which business ideas, because their processes have to be focused on social value. And social value, as a decision-making process for the business alone, will interfere with the success of the business.
Власть, на мой взгляд, должна выступать заказчиком и акционером этого правительства.
So, I think the government is a huge stakeholder because the government is its citizen, right? So all citizens are a stakeholder in the well-being of the nation and their society. But I don't believe they should be an owner of individual businesses. Because if they are, they have what we call a conflict of interest. Their interest should be to create a level playing field where all participants compete on their merits. So I think the social interest of government is to provide the opportunity, the garden, if you will. It's the job of business and the entrepreneurs to pursue specific opportunities, and government will benefit because businesses will create taxes and jobs and resources that will feed back to society directly through payroll and indirectly through the redistribution of tax revenues.
Спасибо, господин Мягкин. Я хотел к Алексею Алексеевичу обратиться, как представитель фонда Сколково. Фонд Сколково в таком случае, какой из философии он придерживается? Потому что вещь достаточно разная. Философия я не буду называть российской и американской. Наверное, правильнее границу провести по Ла-Маншу, это уже англосаксонский континентальный, но все-таки ближе к континентальной, и мы раз стремимся к такому государственному патронализму. Потому что я совсем маленький выписался. Каким вы видите будущее фонда Сколково и вообще этой новой схемы по координации социальных потребностей общества и возможности
во-первых, нужно ответить на вопрос, а кто, какая позиция в обществе отвечает за то, чтобы эти потребности актуализировать и на основе них обращаться к решенным инженерам, которые способны на эти потребности удовлетвориться, чтобы изменить качество жизни. Очень серьезный танец. Я считаю, что это хорошо ответить на этот вопрос. Прежде всего, нужно обратиться к сфере образования. Это которое я в конце вернусь к этому вопросу обязательно. Но здесь очень важно не только создавать университет и строить инновационное развитие федеральным уровнем, как является и в регионах. Вокруг университета еще очень важно понимать, вокруг каких университетов. Вот эта модель Clinical Campus показывает, все знаете хорошо, господин Институт недавно был в Москве, и в Томске, и один из университетов системы управления радиоэлектроники издал книгу на русском языке, господин Институт, собственно, про эту модель мы теперь все имеем возможность ознакомиться с ней на русском языке. Он говорил о том, что очень важно, чтобы университеты не только развивали свою исследовательскую компанию, но и развивали свою предпринимательскую